friends, and welcome to Costuming in Color. This is a YouTube show dedicated to showcasing amazing costumers of color and those that support them. I'm Gigi, a cultural history buff, dabblist, and a costumer.
And I'm Noelle, a costumer who likes to play both sides of the historical and cosplay world. Today, we have Cindy. Hi, Cindy. How you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
I'm good. Gigi? Yeah.
So now we're going to get into our house rules. The first rule of costuming in color is that you tell everyone about costuming in color.
Yes. This way, even if you don't have people of color in your local groups, you can get to know some in our global community.
The second rule of costuming in color is that kindness matters. Aside from that, there are no rules. So let's get into it. My first question for you, Cindy, is where are you from and do you still live there?
So I am actually a native San Franciscan. Like I was born and raised in San Francisco, like the actual city, not, like Daly City or something like that.
That's
Nothing against Daly City, but yeah, so I have pretty much been in the Bay Area my whole life. So I went to San Diego for college and spent several years there, but then moved back to now where I am in the East Bay. So still pretty close to San Francisco.
What's your favorite thing about where you live?
I know everyone says this about where they live, but the food in Bay Area is amazing. You can pretty much get anything you could possibly want, but I'm especially partial to having a lot of specifically Cantonese food around here because there's a lot of people from Hong Kong, which is where my parents are from. And so that makes me really happy.
The food here is so good. That's like one of the reasons I won't move away, even though it's crazy expensive. You can have anything you want at like 3 a.m. if you feel like it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Like we have a Hong Kong cafe like 2 blocks from us.
That's amazing.
Yeah, agree. The food is great out there. I love visiting. So tell me a little bit about your Instagram handle. How do you pronounce it? And why did you choose it?
Okay, so first off, it's Cationdesigns. A lot of people think it's Cationdesigns, like the ending of vacation, and a lot of people think that it's Cationdesigns because my name is Cation or my name is Cat or something. It's actually because I am a science teacher, and for those of you who remember, I don't know, high school chemistry, there's a positively charged ions are called cations, and so I liked that sort of made a nod to like I'm into science, but also I really like cats and trying to be a generally positive person. So yeah.
Not that we haven't covered this before in many costuming in color, but what is the costuming scene like where you live?
Well, Noelle, it's amazing here. Although I have to say, I don't actually know about official events per se, because I kind of end up just doing things with friends. But I hear that there are a lot of events around, historical dances, cons, events put on by GBACG.
You should come to some of them.
I really should, but children.
Because then I could like say hi and see you and stuff in person, IRL.
One day.
Yes, I would love to meet you in person one day. So when you're doing costuming, do you do cosplay, historical, or both?
Totally both.
Yeah. Since you do historical, what time period or place is your favorite?
I would say probably like the 1920s, 1930s. Mostly, okay, this is because I really like a lot of historical eras, like the 18th century is also another favorite, or Regency. So basically all the eras, but I like the 1920s and 30s because you don't have to make underwear first in order to make the garment. So many other eras, like if you want it to look proper, you have to put on or like either get or acquire, make a corset or stays. But 1920s and 30s, like put on a sports bra and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's
or
totally
at least
true.
That's how it's been for me. So I like that I can just dive right into making the pretty shiny thing. And the 1920s and 30s has a lot of pretty shiny things.
Absolutely does.
And when you're doing cosplay, what kind of characters do you gravitate towards?
So I like a lot of villains. Anytime that a villain has like a tragic backstory or, some weird family dynamics that you could get into, like, oh, Ursula, was supposed to have the Sea King crown, except then like Triton stole it or something. If there's some kind of backstory, whether it's canon or not, but if you could make up a tragic backstory for it, then I'm all there for it. Or even for villains that have no backstory, like if it just has a cool aesthetic, I could go for it. Like my most recent Balrog, like the Balrog has no backstory. Well, I mean, it does have a backstory, but it's not a compelling one necessarily. But it's got a whole aesthetic. Like it looks like a volcano just in person. So I'll do that.
That was a heck of a design.
Yeah, but if it's not a villain, then I'll go for any like powerful, badass, like nerdy, female like power character.
That makes me want to ask you if you saw that Little Mermaid on Broadway play.
I don't think so.
Okay, so you know how they have Disney on Broadway or whatever? They did the Little Mermaid, and it talks about how Ursula is King Triton's sister, and it was supposed to be her crown and stuff. Except the entire play, I gotta kind of back up to do this for you all. I'm gonna stand up. The entire play, everyone in the play goes like this. Like they're underwater. The entire time. It's a 3-hour play. It's amazing.
They get a core workout.
It's not a good one. I can't recommend it, but also it's kind of amazing to see them like have to keep doing that, and they're not in sync in any way. So it's very amusing.
That kind of sounds amazing for like a short time.
Yeah, it is. It's really funny for the first hour, and then you're like, oh my God, they won't stop. Okay.
Did it make you feel a little like seasick yourself?
That's what I was gonna say. Like, would it feel like somebody's just shaky camming the whole thing?
Yeah, it's a kind of upset. It's very funny, and then it's very upsetting, and then it becomes funny again after like, the second hour.
I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. How did you start in costuming?
I think like a lot of people, I got started because Lord of the Rings, the original, Peter Jackson trilogy with all those amazing costumes, and
20th anniversary.
Yes. So for Return of the King, there was my first time ever at a midnight showing, and like the day of the midnight showing, because I had to wait till midnight, I was like, I should do something. And so I ended up painting, or actually no, my sister painted a balloon to look like the Eye of Sauron, and I'm like, wouldn't this be awesome if you just like put it on your head with like a cool headpiece so that you looked like the tower with the Eye of Sauron on it? And so we rigged up a whole headband. I wore it. Like people were like, that's amazing, can I take your picture? And I was like, I'm hooked. I'm doing this, like dress up as an adult thing as long as I possibly can.
That's so funny.
Aside from the fact that, yeah, dressing up as an adult is cool, what keeps you in the costuming community?
Honestly, meeting so many people who are also extremely passionate about specific niche things is super fun, because I meet a lot of people who are like, they have very, how do I say this without sounding terrible?
Well, actually,
like their interests are very I don't know, like there are a lot of people who share their interests, and when they find out like, oh, you don't watch any TV, I don't know what to say to you. Then I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll sit here awkwardly for the next 10 minutes or however long we're sitting here. But when I meet other people who are also extremely interested in this one, so like, how do you tip steel boning? Like, let's talk about that for the next half an hour. Who's got the best methods? Like, those are the kinds of fun conversations that I really enjoy, like getting to talk to people about what they're interested in, which is also what I'm interested in. And it's really niche, and everyone gets to be excited together.
Nice. So I like that you're sitting in your sewing room, I'm thinking, because I see a dress form and I see some thread, I think, on spool. So tell me about your favorite completed project.
So I already mentioned the Balrog because that's kind of what I like doing, is like picking something that's totally random that nobody has done before and then putting a totally different spin on it. So with the Balrog, I mean, it's in the movie for what, like maybe 5 minutes. And it doesn't get I mean, there's a backstory in the books, but it's not like the Balrog has a personality or anything, or any motive other than I'm here to destroy Gandalf and we'll move on from there. And then you never hear from him again. But like, let's pour all this time into making like a whole like evening wear look, and lots of beading. I love doing any kind of intricate beading project, and so that, yeah, lots of effort for this one side character is my jam.
I love it. What is the silliest thing that's ever happened to you at an event?
Not quite an event, but a photo shoot. So a bunch of other Asian costumers in the Bay Area and I occasionally meet up to do like little picnics, shoots, whatever, for where we get to wear outfits from our cultural heritage. And so AJ, who you guys have interviewed before, Confused Kitty Sewing, and I carpooled together to Golden Gate Park, and we are wearing our hanfu, so our Chinese cultural garments. And so both of us had these huge flappy sleeves, and our garments were like on the pale side of things. And so we were walking up to the pavilion where we were meeting, and then a guy walks by. He's like, "Oh, you guys look gorgeous. Which one of you is the bride?" I'm like, "Neither." So
I mean, I would marry AJ. AJ's awesome.
She is awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have maybe a sentimental or nostalgic memory that you want to share with us from costuming?
Oddly enough, not from one of my own costumes, but a costume I made for a friend's daughter. So she is, I don't know if she still is. She's at the time she was 3, and she was super into specifically the Brandy Cinderella. So which is like great, and she watched it like every day, and so she wanted to have a dress from Brandy Cinderella, but like you can't find that dress. Like you can find all the other Cinderellas, but you're not going to get that dress. So for her birthday, I secretly made the Brandy Cinderella dress for her, and it was just like, I'm a fairy godmother. I get to be the real fairy godmother making a Cinderella dress for a girl who wanted the Cinderella dress. So it was, I don't usually sew for other people, but like this was worth it.
Sounds like it. What costuming groups or organizations are you in?
So I've always wanted to join GBACG, or the Greater Bay Area Costumers Guild, but just being a mom, I can never quite like find enough events during the year where I'm like, yeah, I could confidently get away for that. And so I find it easier to just do things with friends. So I'm fortunate to know a lot of other costumers in the Bay Area that we can like do casual meetups where I don't have to worry about like, is this membership fee worth it?
Pro tip for anyone who wants to come to GBACG events, you do not have to be a member to show up. You just have to pay more to show up. They have it non-member ticketing. Yeah.
Is it like a huge fee or small?
It's not very much. Like if the event is like a $30 ticket, it'll be $35 for non-members or something.
Yeah, a $5 non-member fee. That's kind of standard. So that's not bad at all. Okay.
Yeah.
What cons or events do you recommend?
So the only con that I went to regularly before the COVID times was the Silicon Valley Comic Con. And that was, it's right here in the Bay Area, and I could usually make it out there, and they actually have a lot of stuff for little kids too, so I could bring my kids to it, and they can play, and they can even get dressed up. And so that was the one event that I always went to, but now that it's pandemic times, nothing.
If you ever decide to go back to that, I think it's called SillyCon now, hit me up because I live 10 minutes from there.
Good to know.
And I will come out and be like, hey, what's up?
We'll do that next year, maybe.
Yeah. Who's your costumer crush?
Okay, I already mentioned her, but AJ from Confused Kitty Sewing. She's the first, she was the first non-white costumer that I ever stumbled across on online. I was looking for Batman Beyond cosplays, and she's done a couple of them, and I was like, nobody cosplays Batman Beyond. Like, everyone does like the original Batman cartoons, or like, you know, the movies. But Batman Beyond is my favorite Batman. And so I was like, look, this person, she's Asian, she does Batman Beyond. And oh my goodness, she also does so many other types of costumes. Like, she does, you know, just like movie costumes. She does, you know, Chinese historical dress. She does like, you know, Western historical dress. And I've never seen that before. So I like spent, I don't know, a scary long time going through her entire portfolio. I'm like, I like all of these things. And then so when I got to actually meet her and like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I mean, that's probably how people feel like when they meet, I don't know, the Backstreet Boys. I don't know what to compare it to.
I mean, I've said this a bunch of times on this situation before, but like AJ is kind of my customer crush too, because like I wouldn't be costuming without her. She is a person who said things at the exact right way and time that made me go, oh, this is interesting and I can do this. So yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. And she's like so generous too. I was saying that I like needed to put a whole bunch of grommets into a corset, and then she was like, come borrow my grommeter, which is like super nice. Like, it's like the heavy duty kind, so that you're not banging away with a hammer.
Yeah.
And it made everything so much easier. And she's like, yeah, just keep it for as long as you need to grommet things. I'll let you know if I need it back. I'm like, this is amazing.
She's amazing. I love her.
She really is.
Likewise. What is your entertainment routine when you are sewing or crafting?
So I like to try to keep things kind of thematic with what I'm making. Like, when I was making my pirate coat, I listened to a lot of the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack. And then when I was making like Hanfu, I listened to the soundtracks from like different Chinese historical dramas that I was into. So keeping it thematic for the sewing portion, when, you know, my sewing machine is going, but for during the hand sewing parts, I'll listen to podcasts.
That's awesome. What kind of podcast?
Sort of whatever I'm into at the moment. So I like to listen to a lot of podcasts about cannibalism.
What?
So
this is amazing. This is so much cooler than I thought this was going to get.
The Donner Party, or the whale ship Essex, or like the what was it, the soccer team that was stranded in the Andes. Like any situation that devolves into cannibalism, I'm like, I really want to listen to this.
Wait, the soccer team ate each other?
I've never heard this story.
No.
You've never? Oh, okay. So sometime in the 1970s, I think, a soccer team was trying to fly over the Andes. Their plane crashed, and then like a bunch of people, I mean, not to make light of the tragedy, but you know, a lot of people on their plane died. And then in order to make it out of the Andes, a bunch of the players had to decide, like, we're gonna pack up our friends and family in order to make it out.
Wow. I'm gonna have to look into that. I'm listening to a Jack the Ripper one right now, but it's about the women and their lives before that happened, because like there's a lot of evidence that they weren't actually prostitutes. Like some number of them weren't actually prostitutes and stuff. And so there's this woman who wrote this book called The Five, and she hosts this podcast. I think she's having a what is this, an academic argument with some other guy, and she's using this podcast as her way to like tell him off, because every now and then she sort of like devolves into this like, and this guy said blah 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 and he's wrong, but it's about them and their lives. So she tells you like the life story of the women that Jack the Ripper killed before they got killed, and how they ended up where they were when that act went down. So it's like not about actually him at all. It's like a feminist perspective on the Jack the Ripper situation, which I was like, okay, let's listen to this.
That sounds awesome.
Called Bad Women, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Not as awesome as cannibalism, but you know.
It's like serial killers are one step down from cannibalism. I will give you that.
I mean, I feel like we kind of are all on the same like vibe here, because the last podcast I listened to was about the Getty kidnapping. And I didn't know anything about the Getty kidnapping in the 70s overseas over in Italy. Yeah. So I listened to a podcast and they detailed like all of the things that happened to the kid and like who really was behind it. So yeah, I think I will also look for cannibalism, and I might even look up what you were talking about, Noelle. Okay.
Yeah.
Podcast for sewing.
All right. This got dark. Okay. Who inspires you?
On a lighter
cannibalism.
Let's get more heartwarming. My parents.
Not cannibals.
Not my parents are not cannibals. I mentioned my parents are from Hong Kong, and so you know, as immigrants, you know, they've obviously had to, you know, overcome a lot of things, but specifically what I appreciate is sort of the family cultural value of being able to make something from nothing or from trash, basically. So like growing up, I remember like my dad would like bring home like, hey, I saw a bunch of like giant refrigerator boxes by the side of the road. I'm gonna bring them home and like, you know, use a box cutter and make them into a castle for you and your brother. Or, you know, I found these pallets on the side of the road, a lot of things on the side of the road, and I'm going to make it into a tree house in our backyard. Or like these old tires, let's make it into a swing or a seesaw. And so I try to bring that same sort of MO into my costuming with making what I can from like found objects. Like my Loki horns are made from those weird little like bat shaped shoe hanger that you get like, you know, at Target when you buy, you know, the sort of $20 shoes. So that kind of, you know, crafting where like, here's a piece of otherwise, you know, trash or recycling. How can I turn it into a costume piece?
That's awesome. That's really cool.
What or who are you grateful for?
My husband definitely would not be able to be here with my costuming if it wasn't for like he, you know, takes care of so much around the house and with like the kids. There's actually a poem by Rochelle Distelheim that I always think of when he's like, you know, doing the dishes so that I can, you know, finish up a thing before a deadline or whatever. The poem goes, to be an artist, you need talent as well as a wife who washes the socks of the children. And no muse is a good muse unless she also helps with the laundry. So like the whole poem is basically like a feminist poem about how, you know, the reason why you have all these like male geniuses is because their wives were like going to PTA meetings and doing, you know, all the like potty training while the guy just wrote or whatever. And so I feel incredibly lucky that, you know, my husband is like a cheerful, like I'll do all these things so that you can like enjoy your creative time.
Oh, that's really kind. Yeah.
Sounds like a great guy.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite inspirational quote? And if so, who is it by?
I don't actually know who it's by. It's wherever you are, be all there. So I find that really, well, maybe more aspirational because I have a hard time. I mean, if you have ADHD brain, then you know, like, you know, oh, there's a squirrel, you know, but like, I like in the middle of one project, I'll tend to already be thinking about the next project. And then I like lose interest in the project I was working on when I thought of the new project. And so it's just a good reminder that like, you know, whatever you're doing, like just be all into it. And that's true for like, you know, going to events too, instead of thinking like, how can I Instagram this so that it's like, you know, perfect or whatever, but like, you know, just be there in the moment and enjoy the thing. And, you know, I think that's true for, you know, a lot of life too, not just costuming.
100%.
If you could give new costumers one piece of advice, what would it be?
Can I quote you, Noelle, and just do the thing? I think there's so much where, you know, especially for the way that I do costuming with like using sheets or using curtains or trash or whatever, it's like, well, you're not supposed to use that. Like you're not supposed to use sheets because like they have, you know, the wrong drape or whatever. Like you should use real fabric, you know, things like that. And I'm just like, no, just, you know, ignore the rules, you know, and just either find a way to make the material work with, you know, within your budget, or even like doing projects that are supposedly out of your, I don't know, skill level. Like the first historical gown that I made was, or I should say the second historical gown that I made was a Regency ball gown, which I think is still like stands up to the test of time. You know, even with like several more years of sewing under my belt, I still think that was a pretty good second project. And my first project was actually the wearable muslin for that project. So but if somebody had told me like, oh, sorry, Janet Arnold patterns of fashion, like you're not supposed to start there. You're supposed to start with like a simplicity pattern or something like that. Like I never would have done that. But I was like, well, everyone talks about Janet Arnold. I guess I'll just figure out how to make it work from a sheet.
Sheets are real fabric. I don't know who would say that. That's dumb. Those are real fabric.
It is.
Absolutely. All right. If you have a closing message of inclusion or equity, we would love to make space for that for you.
I think it sounds so simple and like little kid, but like I have little kids, so this is my world right now. But don't yuck somebody else's yum. So, I mean, everyone knows, you know, if you're at a historical event or historical costume event, like you don't go up to people, or I hope people know, don't go up to people and like, sorry, your seam is in the wrong place. You know, like it's not hurting you to have that person's, like they may have a different goal, they may have a different budget in costuming. And so like, you know, don't rain on their parade. If they're happy with their gown and it's not hurting you, then just leave them be and let them enjoy it. But I think a sort of the corollary to that is also think about like how your yum might be hurting somebody else. So at my son's school, they have a table that's peanut free, and then everyone else can bring like peanut butter or whatever. And so I didn't realize this at the beginning of the school year. I thought like, oh, there's no nut-free policy, so I assume that peanut butter is like good to go. And so I asked him like, you know, do you want a PB&J for lunch? No, I don't want a PB&J. No, I don't want a PB&J. I'm like, what happened? You love PB&Js. And so I found out after talking to him about it that he was like, well, I know you can bring PB&Js, but like his friend is the only person who has a nut allergy. And so she's sitting by herself at the nut-free table, and everyone else has their PB&Js or like their Snickers or whatever it is that they bring that has peanuts. And he's like, well, I don't want Hazel to sit by herself, so I'll go without my PB&J so I can go sit with her, and like, you know, she can have a friend. And I just think that's such like it's wholesome, and it's like, this is such a generous way to live, that like, yeah, you could insist on your right to have a PB&J, and you could, but like somebody else is going to feel left out. And so I think about like, you know, people who want to wear, you know, 1850s gowns to a plantation, you know, like a fancy gown, you know, and they're like, well, it's my right to, I can, there's nothing in the rules that says that I can't, you know. But like, if you're doing that and it's hurting somebody else, like, yeah, it's your right to, but you know, at some point you can say like, hey, I'm going to cheerfully lay down my right to do this thing so that somebody else can feel included and welcome. And so I think, you know, we have a lot to learn from kids, and that, you know, he was just happy to do that. He wasn't, you know, going to insist like this, I want a PB&J, you know. So
you're a good mom if you raise a kid who does that. That's what that says. Yeah,
I agree. Sounds like a very sweet kid. So I want to say thank you, Cindy, for joining us. It was really great to get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you also to our viewers for joining us today. We will leave a list of Cindy's information below, so you can go follow her on all of her platforms.
Please do give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe if you haven't, and tell all your friends about Costuming in Color. And if you have a customer of color that you think we should interview, please leave that in the description box down below. There is going to be a link that you can click on, and there's a form you can fill out, and that person that you nominate can in fact be you. So feel free to nominate yourself. We don't know. And make sure to leave a little love for Cindy in the comments down below. Bye guys.